Ryan Glover. This video I wanted to talk about Donald Trump. He was recently another assassination attempt took place against his life, and I think I want to say regardless of your partisan, whether you're a Democrat, independent, I find it very distasteful that people are laughing on social media, and I feel that this is an assault on democracy. And I don't agree with everything that Trump said. I think a lot of the things that Trump has said in the past are xenophobic. I feel that he's very divisive for this country. I think that he probably has committed the criminal acts that he is charged with. But I don't have joy in another human being's life possibly being taken. I think I see a lot of people on the other side of the aisle, whether they're Democrat or independent, celebrating the fact that Donald Trump was nearly assassinated. And I think that's problematic. I think it shows how distasteful our society is becoming. I don't understand why we can't be kind to each other. I think that Donald Trump, why I don't agree with everything that he's done ideologically. There's a number of things that he has done throughout his career that are repugnant, from being a con man, calling for the rest of the Central Park Five, refusing to rent to black tenants, making black people go to the back of his casino, when him and Ivanka Trump would visit. I think that there's a lot of things and reasons not to Donald Trump, but I've never wished death on Donald Trump. And I think that there's a lot of people on social media I see doing that, and it makes me really wonder where a lot of people's values are, that they would cheer on or even promote fake conspiracy theories that this is something to avoid going to prison, or that these are publicity stunts, basically, so it can help because he's probably going to lose the election to Vice President Harris. And I just think that in this particular time I would Democrats especially, I think they should be more tasteful. If they're truly the classy people that they say they are, which a lot of liberals have these objections about Trump, myself, I feel any decent person would see something wrong with Trump's behavior. But when you start sinking to that level of where you're saying that he doesn't deserve empathy, because at the end of the day Donald Trump is a human being that was made in God's likeness. He says that he believes in God, and I like to believe that is true. I feel I don't see that all the time through his actions. There have been times and stuff where I've seen things that Donald Trump has done, which I would say are good, and shows that he's a man of faith, perhaps. And I would like to believe that. I think obviously there's a number of things that contradict that, from his affair with Stormy Daniels, paying her hush money and being a married man. But also you can't judge people. I've made my mistakes, and I think other people have made mistakes. I could argue back and forth, but I think it's really concerning when I see people voicing contempt for Donald Trump and wishing bad things upon him, or making it seem that this is something normal in our country. This is a free country, and we have a life, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I feel Donald Trump, besides maybe being a convicted felon, there's really no reason why he shouldn't be running for president. And obviously at the polls, that's the right way to show people who the American people have chosen, as opposed to this distaste that continuously goes on social media. I just find it very distasteful how people go on social media and continue to display this lack of empathy, or really don't to look at facts. I feel where it shouldn't be based on what side of the aisle you are on, that you could critique Kamala Harris without being Republican. Like, I think, like, there's fair critiques for her. Like, she's not a perfect candidate. And I mean, there's no perfect candidates. Obviously, like, that we're all flawed people and we can discuss these ideas ideologically, wherever you fall, but it could be respectful. We can have respectful conversations. And I feel there's a lot of times where people don't want to have respectful conversations or look at the facts. They more so prefer to have what seems like idol worship, like, where they propel these people to larger than human status. And I think, like, that's absolutely ridiculous because they're human beings. And obviously they're going to be flawed. They make mistakes just like, you or me. And Donald Trump obviously is no different. But I feel like, there's more mistakes, obviously, for us to see. And he doesn't make an effort of trying to be a perfect person or, like, even try to be politically correct or deal in facts from his allegations that people in Springfield, Ohio, or Haitian immigrants are eating pets. I mean, I think that's a ridiculous claim. And, like, there's obviously been no proof that anything like that is going on. And I think, like, that we have to stop going on salacious details and, like, rumors and innuendo. And I think, like, a lot of times, like, people are pushing those more so, like, than the ideological differences. If you don't like someone just because of the policies that they push, whether, like, why can't you just debate those issues? Why can't it be about the issues and the policies and who's actually the best leader for America, as opposed to, like, not liking this person and having such a disdain for them that anything that they do, you will deny or make it seem like, that they're doing something malicious or nefarious. And I think, like, that will be the destruction of our democracy, the end of our country, if people continue to do that. And I think, like, that we can save this country, but, like, it starts with treating people with respect that disagree with you. Like, just because someone disagrees with you doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that they're malicious. Everyone has different life experiences. Everyone looks at things differently. I think, like, we need to have conversations to continuously make this country great. And partnership is important. I would like to see, like, Republicans and Democrats getting along better and working together to create laws, like, for the American people. We need both parties. That's how, like, democracy works. It should be give and take. It shouldn't be, like, where one side is, like, triumphing over the other to the point where the other side feels so defeated. But, like, we also need competence. We need great leadership. And that's why I feel Vice President Harris is the better choice between her and Donald Trump. I don't feel like Donald Trump is a competent leader, but at the same time, I don't wish him death. And I feel like that's something and everything that I'm seeing from a lot of little rules on social media, like, where, like, that they're almost happy that, like, Trump is, like, being targeted for assassination. And I think, like, it's problematic, like, the Russian interference, just social media overall is a really hurtful thing for our election process, and people aren't really taking that into consideration. And I'm hoping that, like, no violence occurs regardless of who is elected president. And I think, like, when we start getting to that point where there's violence over the possibility over who is elected, especially if this ends up being a close election, how are we any different than, like, a third world country? How are we the number one country in the world? And I think, like, that we really are the number one country. I wouldn't have chose to be born anywhere else. I feel America is a great country, and I'm proud to be American. I serve this country, but I really have an issue with the way, like, that people are spreading false information, like, continuously not willing to look at facts, not willing to educate themselves when we have all these resources available for people to be able to read and decipher information. And then I feel like there should be a crackdown on, like, social media of, like, people spreading misinformation. I shouldn't have to defend myself for something that is accurate and true. And people, like, are able to spread lies and things that are false. And then why are there so many bots? I just, like, think, like, that we could solve a lot of these issues. And I think, like, a lot of these big tech companies need to step up and really intervene so we can have a fair election And I'm glad Donald Trump is alive. God bless him. And may the best person win this election, whether it's Vice President Harris or Trump.